Welcome to the PowerHaus Podcast. I'm Gabrielle Caine, and this show reveals what successful people do differently so you can too. We'll dig into the choices, habits, and turning points behind the results and leave you with one practical step to use each week. Welcome to the PowerHaus Podcast. My name is Gabrielle Caine, and I'm here with my guest today, Doug Meyers. Good afternoon, Doug. How are you today?
Hey, Gabrielle, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Awesome.
I'm very excited to have you on today so that you can share your story with us and let us know what you've been up to. Would you like to start and let us know what it is that you do?
Yeah, I'm always humbled and scared when people ask me because on one hand, I feel like everything I learned as a sales trainer and in sales was to come up with a super quick elevator pitch, and yet I have a really hard time doing that. So yeah, what am I? Currently, I am a business owner. I'm the owner of a high-end window covering business here in the Greater Vancouver area. So Final Touch window coverings. And we do high-end window coverings for custom homes and commercial spaces. Everything from, your $2 million plus condo build to some of the biggest and nicest homes that people are building up in Whistler and West Vancouver and Point Grey Road for those who are familiar in Vancouver. So it's a really interesting space, really unique business to be a part of. And it's a business that I actually acquired um, about 4 months ago. So I am an acquisition entrepreneur at that as that is, and I know that's a bit of a hot button topic for a lot of people today. So I'm happy to talk about that. Still very much an active real estate investor as well. So I own a number of rental properties, certainly not as much as I used to. And I am happily married. Been married for almost 3 years. Love my wife. Amazing relationship. Super important piece to me. And I do marathons. I'm a marathon runner. I've done multiple marathons and continue to do so. And I think behind that, though, what drives a lot of this is I am super obsessed with personal development and getting better every day. And that's taken a shape and form in my life in business, with my own faith as well, in my relationships. And so one of the things I'm actually most excited about or really enjoy doing is continuing to lead a number of small men's groups, mastermind groups, faith-based studies, things like that, with other men and other business owners and high-performing people, making sure that we're all doing a good job of living very intentionally, living on purpose, and continuing to get better. And I find, especially for men, it is perhaps hard to find those kinds of communities, let alone ones that you feel really connected to. So I've loved leading those kinds of small groups, and having done so now for, I don't know, 5-ish years, it just feels like a very natural calling. So I continue to do that amidst everything else. And I'm sure there's lots of jumping off points from there. So yeah, I'll toss it back over to you.
Yeah, I like that. You have a lot on your plate. It seems like you know what you're doing. You know where you want to go. Did you always feel that way? Did you always know what you wanted to do?
No, definitely not. I think at the core of it, I did always know that um, I, I've always had a desire to want to grow and get better. And that's taken shape in my life in many different ways. So I'll take you back to when I was like a teenager. When I was 13, this was 2004. So, do the math. Now you can figure out how old I am. In 2004, I was obsessed with basketball. And this was back when Steve Nash was, tearing up the NBA and, being a fellow white, skinny, small Canadian. I was like, oh, if he can do it, I can do it. And so I read his book. It was called Long Shot. I actually stole it from the middle school library because I didn't want anybody else to read it and then have my dream. Yeah, so ridiculous. Anyways, I read this book in like 2 days, coming from someone who does not read books, and I just was so fired up, and that changed the trajectory of my then teenage life from being kind of interested in basketball to I'm going to make the NBA. And for the next 6 years, my life revolved around being as good as I could be at basketball. And I kind of worked backwards from, okay, if I'm going to make the NBA, then I got to play in the NCAA. And to do that, I'm going to have to make this provincial team. And I got to make the club team first. And then, okay, what does that mean I'm doing tomorrow? Oh, well, that means that I should be shooting 300 jump shots and I should be shooting 300 3 pointers and I should be doing 100 free throws and I should be doing an hour ball handling and 30 minutes on passing. Oh, and on top of that, start doing some conditioning work. And all of a sudden, I had this, a reverse engineered plan for how I was going to get there. And as a 13-year-old looking back on that now, I'm going, isn't that interesting that I had that in me at an age when like I hadn't read a personal development book. I hadn't met anybody who knew anything about or was talking about goals. Like this is all pre social media, pre, internet influencer, YouTube. You go online, hey, how do I build a goal? How do I make my life better? How do I have a vision? Like none of that. And yeah, I just like it just drove me. And so over the years, I actually accomplished a lot of those goals. Like I made the provincial team and I made the club team and I got a college scholarship. I didn't play NCAA. That was the end of the road. But it taught me a lot about wanting to improve and, how do you build a plan, have a vision for something and actually engineer a plan from that vision to where you are today to give yourself the best shot at making it possible. And that has been a theme that has run through my life for many years. And it's taken its shape through basketball first, then when I became a mining engineer, then when I kind of got into doing a couple startup businesses, which both didn't work. They didn't get off the ground beyond, the first 6 months. It drove me when I got into sales and became part of an organization that was selling Grant Cardone sales training in Canada. And I'm sure many people have heard of Grant Cardone and know how intense he is. And then it's driven me to eventually buy a business, as well as the real estate investments that I did for many years. So yeah, I mean, did I know exactly what I was going to do? No, I just knew that I always wanted to grow and improve, and that's led me down a variety of different pathways, which were all serving a various purposes at the particular times that I was doing them. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but at least maybe gives you a little bit more context.
Well, I think it's incredible that at such a young age, being only 13 years old, you already had the understanding and the drive in you to be able to decide this is what I want to do. And I mean, stealing the library book, I think is
Yeah, not
speaking,
not good.
well,
I gave it back, by the way. I did give
oh,
it back a lot later.
that's good. That's
Someone else needs to have the dream now. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's important to share those things. But at the same time, what I mean by that is that you're able to understand at that time that this is what I need to get my hands on in order to be able to build out a plan. And I don't think that there's a lot of people out there at the age of 13 who can grasp the concept of building a plan the way that you had. That is essentially a business plan. And then to reverse construct that in a way that you can say, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. This is where I want to go. So if I work backwards, these are my next steps. So I think
Mhm.
that's incredible that you did that. Did that drive come within you? Is that something that you got from your parents?
I when I got into my 20s, there was a moment in time where I was I was trying to figure out some things about myself to just better understand, hey, how do I operate? And one of the best exercises that I did, I don't know if I read it in a book or if it just came to me as an idea, um, but one of them was to look at both of my parents and ask just myself. I was like, what are their strengths and weaknesses? What are they good at, and what do they really struggle with? And where do each of those things, um, manifest themselves in my life? And one of the things that, when you ask the question about drive, is like definitely my dad. My dad is not, he'd be the first one to tell you he was not a good student. He was not popular in school. Picture the last pick on the in PE class, right? Like, athletically, that's as low as it gets. You're you're the last pick on the team to play dodgeball in PE class. Like, I don't know what that's like. I was always one of the first picks athletically. So he had a different kind of drive. He obviously didn't care what people thought because if you've had that experience in school and where you're maybe being picked on or you're not the first pick and you never are, and that can really hurt you. He didn't see it that way. He got C's and D's in school, and yet was somehow able to go out in the world and build a quite successful small business, a business that has set our family up to do well. And like, what an inspiration. Take care of your family, take care of your kids, build a good business, live a good life. Okay, great. Like, check mark, you've done well in a lot of ways. My mom, on the other hand, if it weren't for my dad, she'd be living a very conservative life, and she still does. But she would have been more than content and happy to be an assistant librarian making $50,000 a year, and living in a really small condo and just getting by. She doesn't live that way now because of the drive that my dad had. But the funny thing about them is, where my dad is not book smart, he's street smart. Street smart. My mom is not street smart, but she is book smart. And so I'm looking at these things and I'm going, I kind of have a bit of both in me. I was school smart because of my mom, and I'm street smart because of my dad. And I'm like, okay, those are strengths. Let's like use those. Let's leverage those gifts as we move forward in whatever my pathway looks like. Meanwhile, they have weaknesses, right? My mom really struggles with anxiety and, doubts and fears about, irrational things. And I have that voice in me. Well, imagine how challenging it is to be an entrepreneur and a business owner when you have a voice like that in your head that is louder than others. Now, I can't speak to other people, but I can tell you, right? I had to stop telling my mom some of my entrepreneurial ideas because she amplifies that voice that I already have.
I
Right?
love that you touched on that. That's a great point because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with is we have our own internal doubts, but then, we want to try something anyway. And this is an idea, it's something I want to create, it's a venture, whatever. And then the first thing you want to do is tell the ones closest to you that you love. Usually it's someone with the same last name or
Yep.
someone close within your family unit. And they love you so much that they, not meaning to, may deter you with their fears.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that and understand that. So to approach that, you had to maybe filter the things that you said to your mom, not share as much.
You're 100% right. But it took me a while to learn that. And it wasn't until, like I said, I want to say maybe my mid 20s to late 20s where I was doing this exercise, and I was starting to realize that, every one of these moves that I'm making at that time, I was really into my real estate investing. I joined I joined a couple of national real estate investing networks here in Canada. I was, building my portfolio quite aggressively, I would say. And it's all relative, right? Like, you meet certain people in the real estate space, they own hundreds of units. I never got to that level. But I was certainly one of the younger people in the room who was, moving things along and I would say doing quite well with it. Um, but like every additional step in the real estate investing game, and you would know this because that's where we met, um, was eventually you're either run out of your own capital or you run out of your own ability to finance deals, and at that point, that's when you start to really become creative or take on new strategies to grow your portfolio. And so I had started doing some of those, and you know try telling your kind of anxious mom Hey, you are not going to believe this. I bought a foreclosure for $200,000 and I'm going to renovate it. Um, oh, and by the way, I'm not using any of my own money to do it. I got this loan from this guy in Ontario who's lending me 25 grand at X dollars so I can make the down payment. And she's like, "You're doing what?" I'm like, "I know, it's crazy." She's like, "Yeah, it is. You're gonna get, whatever, whatever." And I was like, "Why am I telling her these things? I should know by now that her voice that I've already got in me, because I had all those same thoughts. I'm like, this is crazy, is what she's going to amplify back to me." Meanwhile, my dad, entrepreneurial, business owner, street smart, is like, "That's pretty creative. Cool. Let me know how it goes. When can I come out and help you lay some floors?" Right? Two
Wow,
different
the
people.
contrast
Yeah, two
between
different
them.
people, same family. But it just goes to show that, like, who you listen to and who you share your ideas with, um, it really does matter. So you got to you got to learn over time, and this is something that's been really helpful, is, how much weight and time and attention am I going to put on certain people's opinions? It doesn't mean that you don't love them. It doesn't mean that they can't love you because you're doing something different. But it does mean that you may want to be a little bit more discerning in what you share and what you don't share. And yeah, it's that's a real challenge because not everybody is going to understand what you're doing, let alone be comfortable with it, right? And that's I think that's just part of the entrepreneurial and business owner journey, right? So
Yeah, not everyone can understand what it is that you're getting into, sorry, because it takes a certain amount of education and research and networking to be a part of that community and to be able to elevate yourself to the point that you can execute that type of a plan and have X amount of doors. But
mhm.
if you're sharing that story with your loved ones who haven't joined that same venture and gone through the same depth of education and self growth that you have, there's no way that they're going to understand the depth of what it is that you're saying, let alone the intricacies that are involved with that. So it might sound sketchy or scary or
Mhm.
crazy. Whereas someone else who's entrepreneurial will understand, oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. I really love where you're going with that. Let me know where I can jump in.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
so
I
true.
can I can definitely relate. I shared a very brief story with someone very close to me once, and I said something about the creative financing, where once you can't get approved for your own mortgages, you do have to get creative and think outside the box. And they said, "Oh yeah, I want to do the same thing, but I want to do it legally." And
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, okay. And right there, that's when
Yeah.
it hit me. And I thought, okay, conversation over. Thank you so
Hmm.
much for sharing your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's
So,
funny.
when you were playing basketball and then you had to switch or pivot somewhere along the way, no pun intended, and switch
Yeah,
gears,
nice. That was a good one.
you have to switch gears and decide to pursue a different avenue. What had happened? Was that a decision that you made on your own, or was it some outside source that had pushed you in that direction?
Um, Bit of both. I mean, anybody who's played sports at a high level, and man, it's just again, it's so relative, right? Like I played college basketball in Canada in 2009, 2010. Like, Canada's gotten a lot better at basketball as a nation over the past 15 years since I last actually played a competitive game, right? Um, so it's hard for me to sit here and say, "Oh, I played at a really high level." At the same time, I come from a very, like, non-athletic background. Both of my parents are not athletic people. And so the fact that I was able to get a scholarship to play basketball at a post-secondary institution is pretty cool. And, like, I think my wife is a former college athlete as well. And I think that'll athletically hopefully set our kids up at some point to, be successful athletically too. That said, you reach a point where you go, okay, if I was going to make the NBA and the pathway was NCAA scholarship and or, go play pro in Europe, I am like 3 layers below that right now. And I'm starting to realize that these guys around me, they are naturally way more athletic than I am, and they work a tenth as hard. And they've been blessed to be 6'8" and 250, and I'm 6'2", 180, and I have a hard time keeping that weight on. It's just a different ball game. And so you reach these upper echelons in sports, or really in a lot of capacities, and you realize, okay, man, I am capped out here. And so externally, that pressure started to become real. You're 19, 20 years old, you're starting to look around, you're going, okay, I'm actually not at the level that these guys are. And that's hard to swallow when you've built your entire life and your identity around being the basketball guy. So I had an injury about halfway through my second year. I was playing well. I probably could have gone and jumped up to the next level in the Canadian university system. I at least believe that. But then I got hurt, and that was kind of the end of it. I had a knee injury. I didn't rehab it well, and at that point, I'd kind of seen a bit of a light to be like, I don't think I'm actually going to go pro and play basketball. I don't think I'm going to be good enough, and so I needed to pivot and do something else. That was really hard though, because I put so much time and energy into being a basketball player. That was the plan. And now it's like, all right, I guess I'm not going to get paid to play basketball. What am I going to do instead? And, school will tell you to go down certain pathways based on how well or how not well you do in your classes. So, back to my parents, here I am in high school getting straight A's and not really working that hard for them. Good in sciences, good in some other math courses and stuff like that. And so people are like, oh, you should become an engineer. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I guess that's what I'll do. So I pursued engineering, and I became a mining engineer, and I did that for 6 years. Um, but I would say that that led me to, on one hand, it really set up a lot of everything else that I was able to do. It also led me to some really dark places from a career and a life standpoint, because I had ignored what I actually wanted to do. And I didn't ask the questions as a younger man. I didn't ask the questions about, hey, what am I actually gifted at? What do I enjoy doing? Yes, I can be an engineer. Yes, I've been given, these skills to do math and see the world in a certain way, but like, I actually don't like this. So at some point, once you've kind of ticked a money box, you got to start asking yourself a bigger question about, is this purposeful? And am I doing what I'm actually, called to do here? And yeah, I mean, that really led into, transitioning to real estate investing and entrepreneurship and sales and all these other things that I was actually far better suited for, including, the coaching and consulting work that I ended up doing with some other people too, is like, I am, I'm more into people, and engineering was very on a computer in a spreadsheet, dealing with objects and things in the world, and working with a lot of really, hard rundown kinds of people who are very close minded. It was a very hard environment for me to exist in. So when I
Not
started to get
very,
out, what's that? Sorry?
sorry, I was going to say not very personable people.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. As a generalization. Okay. There's, there's personable and good people in all places. And I was, young and perhaps short-sighted in finding those kinds of people. Um, so yeah, I really found myself in a dark place mentally, because I was doing well by many external standards of the world for somebody who's 26 years old. I had At that point, I had 8 rental properties in 3 different provinces. I was building up good net worth. I had done a lot of the right things. I was, getting paid well in my engineering job. And yet I was sitting there going like, is this it? Is this what my life looks like? I'm, here in the middle of nowhere with these, 400 other guys who are in the middle of nowhere, and we're making big rocks into smaller rocks, and like, is that my life? You know? and and the answer was so clearly no. And so, thank God that I had, built this real estate investment portfolio and started flipping houses, to give myself the options to be able to look elsewhere and try something else. So that was really like, you know, that from going from basketball to, the next pivot after that was really, um, yeah, driven by both external forces with the basketball thing, getting injured, and then later on internally by this just complete tension between what I was doing and who I thought I actually was supposed to be, and had ignored when I made the decision to go down the path of becoming an engineer.
I think a lot of people do that. And I know I'm definitely one of them, where you think this is the right thing to do. And for sustainability, long-term
Yep.
sustainability, I need to be able to pay the bills. So I'm going to go where the money is. And we often set aside our own feelings or reservations about what it is we're getting ourselves into. And we trade our time for money, which often takes away from our family and our own personal desires. We often even cross our own boundaries in order to do this.
Yep.
So you got to a point where you kind of did a check-in with yourself and you thought, am I staying true to myself? Am I passionate about this? Does this feed my soul? Has that become something that you do regularly now, where you just check in with yourself? Am I still on track? Am I still passionate about what I'm doing?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, um, I think what you just highlighted with that question, may have actually been the starting point for, um, a lot of the systems that I started building for my own self to, it was my own personal development journey. Um, Today, yeah, I mean, I have personal practices that I do daily, and I think more importantly to this, like, hey, reminding of yourself and checking in with, am I aligned with who I feel I'm supposed to be? And this kind of like, let's call it a soul check-in. Um, it's part of a weekly review that I do. And so I have, I've got a vision for where I'm going in life. And part of staying in line with that vision is to do a weekly review of it. So I will look at these different areas of my life where I've put a lot of time and thought and energy into how I want these things to look. And that's a collaborative activity where I'll sit and, I'll seek counsel from some people about things. I'll also just, try and intuit, hey, what is it that I'm working towards? Certainly prayer and things like that are important to me. So I go to those things to try and, discern and decipher what is it that I'm supposed to be doing. And that's led to, yeah, building this, building a vision around, what do I want my family life to look like? What do I want my life to look like spiritually, physically, my health, my finances, my wealth, my income, community, recreation. And for each one of these pillars, I have like kind of a statement for it. And then underneath that statement, I have some, here's what this looks like. And I will look at it every single week. And I'll say, here's my 10-year vision for my spiritual life. Okay, great. What does that look like? It looks like, being involved in this, doing these things. And I'll just do a quick check. I'm like, okay, am I in line with that based on this week? Not last week, not last month, not next week, this week. Was I in line with it? And it's just a real quick kind of yes, no. And if the feeling is off, and this is something that, if people are listening to this, I'm like, man, this guy's totally out of left field. But like the more you do something, the more you'll start to get in tune with what I call the tone of it. All right. And the best way I can describe this is you're dating somebody new. Okay. So, if you're married or you're dating somebody right now, or maybe you're single, doesn't matter. Think of a time when you're dating somebody new and you start talking to them on the phone. Okay. When you hear their voice over the phone, if you didn't have their call ID, right, and you didn't see their name, would you be able to know that it's them instantly? If they're a new person in your life, probably not. You'd need them to tell you their name, and then you'd pick it up quickly. And the more conversations you have, the more you realize the tone of their voice. Eventually, over time, once you're in tune with that person, they can be across the room in a super loud auditorium and say your name, and you'll hear their voice amongst all the voices. Why? Because you recognize the tone of their voice. And it's the same thing here with this kind of activity where you're looking at this vision and you're asking yourself, am I in tune with this or not? And it's the feeling, right? And you'll be able to look like I can look at my week and be like, yeah, I was a little bit out of tune with this. The tone was off. And I'll be like, why? Oh, I'm missing this piece. And then I'll just make a little course correction, just like an airplane does, right? It's going to LA, it's making small little course corrections all the way from Boston. It's never actually like directly on path. It's just constantly correcting until it gets there. And that's what I'll do so that I remain checked in on this. And it's a very helpful activity. Not going to lie, it takes a long time to get this thing set up. So I'm not going to pretend that it's easy. But once you have it, that system helps you stay aligned on and on purpose, I guess. It's one of my favorite things to do, like, the small groups and the coaching stuff that I ended up getting into, like, was me helping people do that. Because there was this huge frustration that I had with all the personal development and all the, ways that one could improve themselves. You go pick up a book or you go to a seminar, you go to a workshop, heck, you go to church, whatever it is. And it's like, great, I love the message. I get it. But how do I actually apply this to my life so that it creates a result? And after being, years of always searching for the next thing, I'm like, you know what? I just need to build a system around this. And now that I have it, the system helps me to actually act out and live these things so that it works, right? And doesn't just become another book that you read.
Yeah. Thank you for breaking that down. I was absolutely going to ask you, do you think every week is excessive? And if not, then what's the method behind the madness there? But you
Mm.
really touched on a really good point there. And I love the way that you had described that and painted that picture with the new relationship, getting to know that new voice, is that
Mm.
you can, I also find you can make small concessions without realizing it because you don't want to be too negative or you don't want to be disagreeable or whatever those feelings are. And it's like, well, that's something I wouldn't normally like, but I'm just going to let it slide. And that can happen in that 1 week span where you just let it slide. But then maybe the next week you let it slide. The next thing you know, you're too far left, too far right, and you've forgotten the path that you're supposed to be on.
Mm.
So this might have to be something that I do for myself as well. I mean, I
Mm.
am checking in with myself on a daily basis and meditating on a daily basis, praying on a daily basis. So when it comes to me, I think checking in with my soul and my path and my passions makes more sense to check in weekly. I think I really needed to hear that to know. I mean, you just seem so focused and driven and passionate about what you do, and you're on your path, and you're so sure about it that this is how you do it. So thank you for sharing that. I think that that's a really good point that people can take home and practice themselves.
Mm. Yeah, no, you're welcome. I'm glad it came out well. Um, if you don't mind, I I I don't want to correct some of what you said. I just want to maybe frame it a little bit differently.
Absolutely.
Because um, I'm not always sure. Okay. I have my doubts. I have my fears. I have insecurities. I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not. I really don't. Okay. It works for me. And I think um, what I just wanted to share on that is I I've come to grips that it's okay to not be 100% certain or sure and still go forward anyways, because you can live your life in the weird gray area of uncertainty and lack of sureness, and life is still going to happen. You're still going to have problems. You're still going to have bills to pay. You're still going to have dreams. You're still going to have goals and fears and doubts and all these things, right? My question when it comes to, and this is how I've always framed it with anybody who says, because your question is super valid. It's like, is weekly a little bit excessive to do like a week review and check in on your vision and your goals and do it that consistently? And because that's come up in so many sessions that I've done with people on this to like effectively sell them on the idea of doing this, because they're sitting there and going, Doug, you want me to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours reviewing and planning for, next week? I'm like, yeah. And say it as if, that's like a normal thing to do, because it's totally not. And they're like, Doug, I don't have time. I'm like, you don't have time not to do this. I go, what do you mean? Right. So, okay, you got 168 hours in the week, right? 7 days, 24 hours. You're going to be asleep for a third of that. So that leaves you with 16 hours a day. Okay. So if you want to be on purpose, intentional, and effective with the time that you are awake, okay, does it not make sense to invest 2 hours, if that's what it takes, to make sure that the rest of that time is actually being used to help you get towards this vision? You wouldn't take $100,000 today, Gabrielle. You wouldn't take $100,000 and invest that money in something without putting in a lot of time and due diligence to make sure it was the right thing. Yeah.
Correct.
So why would you do that with your life? Is your time not more important? And people who are business people get that. They're like, something will shift in them. Now, it's one thing to have a shift, it's another thing to sit down every week and actually do it. Right? Because here's the thing that happens when you actually review something like this weekly and you're looking at your vision and you're looking at your goals, it's going to show you the stats. The stats are going to tell you that you're off track. You're not doing the things that you said you're supposed to do. And that takes a whole nother level of mindset to be able to look at something that's not going as well and confront it and be like, I actually don't like the way my marriage looks. I actually don't like the way I look in the mirror right now. And you're seeing it weekly. And all of a sudden, it's like, it's right there. It's not just kind of a thing that's in the background. You're like, yeah, I could make this better. No, you're confronting it on a weekly basis. And when you do that, you are forced to ask yourself different kinds of questions like, hey, does this actually matter enough for me to do something about it? Or am I okay with this being mediocre and I'm just going to let it go? You decide. But you can't avoid
Mm-hmm.
it because now it's
Mm-hmm.
here every week and you see it. Right. And this is, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but like this is the challenge that I see with people, and I've dealt with it myself, is like, in the absence of doing this on a weekly basis, so easy to end up into next month, into next quarter, into next year, and wonder why you still look the same. You still feel the same. You're not growing closer to God. You're not growing closer to your wife or your husband. Your business is struggling. Your health is down. You haven't played any golf because you haven't made any time for it and you love playing golf. It's like, no, let's be more intentional and then make
Yeah.
these things happen.
Yeah. You get comfortable being kind of on autopilot, and
Yes.
that's just what happens day to day. And next thing you know, weeks, months, years pass you by.
Mhm.
And in order to undo all that work and get yourself back on track, it's going to take that much more time and effort and
Yep.
resources to be able to do that. So if you keep yourself on track on a weekly basis, the way
Mhm.
I see it is life is hard. Everything about it is hard. If you want to work out and be able to do your marathon, it's going to be hard work to get your body there. But it's also hard not to do the exercises and the running to prepare for it.
Mhm.
It's hard. I mean, you said earlier, if you see yourself in the mirror and you're not happy with what you see, it's hard to see that every day. It's hard to be that every day. Or it's hard to go to the gym or to work out every day. It hurts, it burns.
Yep.
Which heart are you going to choose?
All right. Yep.
Love
Yeah.
it.
We have a little I'll just jump in here real quick because there's fun. I was actually walking this morning with a guy uh I was doing some coaching before with. He's a pretty successful CEO, young guy, really good company, really on purpose, on mission, all that kind of stuff. Um, and I was just reminding him of this little saying, which I'll share with you and the audience, is it's easy to do these things, and it's easier not to do them. It's the exact same thing that you're talking about, right? Life is hard, but it's also hard no matter how you slice it. Well, it's easy to do a week review. Let's just hang out on that subject for a little longer. It's easy to do a week review and check in to see how you're doing. It's easier not to do it because then you can avoid the time and you can avoid the disappointment of being maybe a little bit behind on your goals or whatever you're working on. Um, it's easier to not do it. So that's the one thing. And the other
Mhm.
one is one I love. It's like, okay, if we just want to do life really well and make things happen, we've just got to do all the right things and we've got to do them all the time. And that's it. That's all we got to do.
Wow, that sounds so easy.
That's it. We just got to do all the right things. We got to do them all the time. And you're like, yeah, it sounds easy. And then you wake up on Tuesday morning after you had two crazy workouts on Monday. You're freaking tired, your body's sore, and you're like, man, I don't want to get up. And boom, there you go. Now you're not doing the right thing. And you're not doing it all
Mhm.
the time. I don't know. Fun little things.
Thank you for sharing. I think, yeah, that's right on. That's right on. It just depends on your perspective and how you're going to view it, how you look at the situation. Is
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to do this or choose your heart. It's
Yep.
no matter what, it's going to take work. It's going to take time and it's going to take practice and
Yep.
repeat it. Sorry, repeat it
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again. And then that way it becomes normal.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. So moving forward with we're going to get back to your story. And you were saying that you decided that you were in a dark place and this is something that maybe this is not what the rest of your life looks like. Was that a difficult decision to make? How did you pivot when it came to that point in your life?
um, I think it would have been a much more difficult decision if it weren't for having planted a lot of seeds that like gave me options. So to make more sense of that, I left my mining engineering career at 27, and I jokingly say I retired at 27. Um, at the time, I think I mentioned earlier, I had 8 rental properties, and I had just flipped my first house, and I had made more money, or no, not more money. I made the same amount of money flipping this house as like a passive investment partner as I had in my job, like my full time salary, in 4 months. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. How does that work? I was blown away. I was actually shocked. I was like, wow, it actually worked. Okay. So I took a risk. I partnered with this guy. Um, we flipped a house in Regina, Saskatchewan. And yeah, I made the same amount of money on my salary in 4 months as I did on this house. And I did no work. I put my money to work. Okay. Now, for those who are hearing this and be like, that must be nice, Doug, to have the money to put to work. Let's go one step at a time. I started investing in real estate when I was 21. So now, 6 years later at 27 and having 8 properties, I've got some cash flow. I've got some properties that have increased in value. I've got some mortgages that have been paid down. I've got some refinances that are coming due. And so the capital is now there for me to go and make some of these moves. Like I would not do that on deal number one. Way too risky. And unless you want to ride like some sort of crazy, entrepreneurial high, and just dive in, hey, go for it. But I'm not that kind of a risk taker. So, anyways, I had built up a bit of a nest egg, call it, and it gave me options. Now that was really hard though, because everything I had learned up to that point was buy and hold. You're in these real estate groups. It's like you're not gonna get rich quick in this. You are gonna get rich for sure, but it's gonna take 20 years. And that's great to hear. But when you're like floundering in your job and life, and you're in the super cold winter and you're alone and you're having deep dark thoughts and you're going, okay, that's nice, but my real estate, which is going to make me great in 20 years, is hurting me now. What can I do about it so that real estate can work for me and not me for my real estate? And I had a call with another investor who I'm not close with. I haven't actually spoken to her in years. And she said the most revolutionary thing to me. She's like, well, Doug, how many properties do you have? I'm like, 8. She's like, okay, how old are you? I'm like, 27. She's like, okay, cool. Um, why don't you sell one of your properties and give yourself a bunch of cash and then quit your job? And I'm on the other end of the phone. I'm like, are you crazy? We got to hold forever. That's how the game works. And she's like, yeah, but what's the point of holding if like you hate your life right now and nothing's the way you want it to be? Why don't you give yourself some money, figure it out? And I was like, huh, sounds so easy. So I hang up the phone. I'm sitting there. I'm going, this completely changes everything. Because I had a property like that in a good market that was selling quickly. And so it didn't take long, but I thought, okay, I need to build a plan. And just like I had built the plan to try and make the NBA, I built a plan to leave my job. And I put a date on the calendar. I think it was like 8 months in advance. And I'm like, I'm quitting my job at, 2 weeks before then or whatever. And I'm going to leave. And before that happens, I need to do this, 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 and this. And like, dialed it all in. I sold the property. I had another project to finish. And then I wanted to get into the house flipping thing. So I got into that just to generate some other income. There were a couple other things that needed to happen. Excuse me. And I did it. And I left the mining industry. It's August 2019. I sold a house, and after all the taxes and stuff, this doesn't sound like a lot of money anymore. But I had $60,000, and I was like, I can my current burn rate. I don't live large. Like this will last me 12 months easy, and well, 12 months turned into 3 years, and I partnered off this with this guy, and we flipped 12 houses in 3 years. And I started 2 little businesses that both didn't go well, and that led me to kind of the next chapter. But the house flipping was like it was a business on its own, and yeah, we were turning around deals like clockwork. 3, 4 of them a year. I was basically matching my salary from mining as a now investor flipping these houses. And I started 2 podcasts, and I got involved in real estate investment coaching and training. And I spoke on stages with Keyspire and with Rain. And like all these really cool things started to happen because I had gotten out of this thing that I thought I needed, but was driving me insane, and got connected to what I felt like I was actually supposed to do here on this world, which was, in addition to, figuring it out for myself, how do I live better every day? How do I help other people do that too? And, you know, without just becoming a life coach, I wanted to have some tangible things behind it, like a business that was actually running and doing well, and, other skills like sales and marketing and speaking and leadership and communication, all of these things which were very intentionally part of building the skill set to eventually be able to do what I did recently, which was buy an operating business and hopefully take it to its next level. Right. So, yeah, I mean, that decision was hard, certainly, but it would have been way harder and harder to believe in if there wasn't actually a roadway or a pathway for me to get there. And that pathway for me personally, can't speak to others, but it existed because of decisions made far earlier in life that gave me the freedom to be able to do it. And if there's one thing that I want to share out of that story, it's if you are in a position right now where you don't feel like you're on purpose or you're on the right path, but you have obligations, I'm not saying don't throw away what you've got. Like, you need to be an adult and take care of what you need to do. But start doing what you can to plant these seeds so that you'll have an opportunity to try. Because if you don't, then I'm quite confident that I would have, gone into a deep depression. And I would have looked back in my life when I'm older and I'm on my deathbed. I would have looked back at that moment and been like, Doug, why didn't you make a change? Why didn't you try? Because our world favors people who are willing to try. And even if they get burnt and they break down along the way, guess what? You get another shot. Like, you can try again. And, there are plenty of success stories of people who failed first and then hit it big. Like, why not be one of those people rather than someone who lives timidly under the guise of, hey, I'm going to fail. So you never try. And that drove me to make some pretty big decisions and get out of what was comfortable, but it was comfortably killing me. Yeah.
That is so powerful. I think when it comes to the way you painted that story, it's just when you get to the end of your life, you're, looking back on everything, you're just thinking of all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas and
Mhm.
how you would have changed things, because something so small can actually change the trajectory that you're on in a very big way. And you won't know that unless you take that step.
Mhm.
And it's so powerful to be able to look at yourself and be an advocate for yourself, check in with yourself and check to see what your passions are, what speaks to your soul and what you want to do. Do you want to help other people around you? What type of purpose do you want to serve in your life? And staying true to that. And I think that there's so many of us that find that. And like you were saying earlier, I mean, whether it's your career or your relationship or anything going on in life, you can make these tiny little concessions to say, well, I'll let that slide, or that's not a really big issue right now. But if you keep going in that direction of it's not a really big issue, these little things pile up. And next thing you know, you're deeply unhappy. You
Mhm.
are not in a line, you're not aligned with yourself anymore. So I
Mhm.
think that it's so important to stay true to yourself and to be able to feed your passions, because you have skill sets that you're really good at, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And how astounding that had you actually started to do that for yourself when I think you said you were 21, and you started to look at your parents. What are my strengths? What my weaknesses? Where do I reflect their strengths and weaknesses? And then you
Mhm.
use that as your power play for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible and very impressive. I absolutely love this. So
Cool.
I do have a question. You were saying that you wanted to purchase businesses. So where did that come from? And how did you decide on which businesses you wanted to purchase that would work for you?
Yeah, really good question. So, like many things, let's run it back a little bit. In case if people haven't noticed, I don't know how to answer questions shortly. Never have, probably never will. Um, when I was 19, coming out of the basketball stuff, and I realized that wasn't going to be the path. Um, I took a I took a summer job at a door-to-door sales company, and I sold lawn aeration, like putting the little holes in people's lawns. I sold that door to door here in Vancouver. Got pretty good at it, and I'll save the story because I've already spent a bunch of time on that. Got good at it and made a pretty good amount of money doing sales in a summer. Okay. While I was at this company, if you were one of the top salespeople, you got a ride in the top van. And in the top van, you're with all these other people who are good salespeople, and you're working with the top manager. Well, this company had just come to Vancouver, so the CEO of it had come out and was kind of nurturing people and spending a bunch of time with us. So he's the one driving the top van. And this guy was, his name's Ben Stewart. He probably doesn't even know who I am anymore. Um, but he was like a 13-time world kickboxing champion, like total, probably the most disciplined person I had ever met to that point in time. Super high energy. He never got sick. Like it was nuts. I'm like, how is there a person like this in the world? 6'3" or whatever, just jacked, and he had a family and kids and he's got this business. I'm like, what the heck? Anyways, this is 2009, 2008. Like this is the foreclosure crisis down in the US. And, we're going home after a long day's work. We're in the van and we're talking about things because we would talk about different things in the top van and then the other van. So we're talking about things like, hey, what are you going to do with your money? Like you just made $300 cash, which for a 19-year-old in 2008 is a lot of money. Okay. Um, what are you going to do with this? And, you have kids being like, oh, I'm going to buy a Mustang and I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy some supplements or whatever. And be like, don't be an idiot. You should come down to Phoenix this year at the end of the season, buy a property. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? But he's like, no, like the deals are on sale right now. You should get into real estate. Um, and I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but like this thing stuck with me. It was, what do successful people do? And at the time, success to me meant just money and wealth. It means something totally more than that now, but at the time it was just money and wealth. And it was very obvious. They own real estate and they own businesses. And that always stuck with me. And so at the time, I didn't have enough money to go down and buy a foreclosure, but I made a promise to myself. I'm like, as soon as I have enough money to buy real estate, that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a property. Well, fast forward 2 years later, and I'm into some co-op jobs and stuff like that. I had enough money to go buy my first property. 21 years old, I bought a duplex. Freaked out all my friends at school because they're like, what do you mean you bought a property in a place that you're not going to live? I'm like, don't worry, it's an investment. It's going to work. And it did. That was the property that I sold that allowed me to leave my job. Okay, so it worked for sure. All this to say, that was the start of it. It was like real estate and businesses. So fast forward through my 20s, I'm doing real estate. I'm not doing business. But I start to get involved in some of these different real estate groups and I go, hey, wait a second. The people who are running real estate investments well are running them like a business. And it dawned on me. I'm like, oh, wait a second. You can build a real estate investing business. The problem is most people who get into real estate investing and start to scale their real estate investments do so with an investor mindset, not a business owner mindset. And that gets them into trouble. And we probably don't have much, I'm not going to get into it on this podcast. We don't have time for it. But like that's part of the reason why I think so many people got really, I'm not going to use the word, but screwed over the past couple of years when interest rates went crazy and they got caught holding the bag with other investors' money. They didn't run it properly. They weren't thinking like a business owner and they got in trouble. And I know this because I lost money on some of those deals. where I gave someone else money. I didn't believe in myself enough to hold on to it and run my own business. And I lost because they were doing that. It's my own fault. I shouldn't have given them the money. But at the same time, I'm like, wait a second. You guys were running this like investors, not like business owners. And those are different mindsets. They
Can
really
you
are.
can you break those down?
Yeah. So, like, an investor looks at return on investment. Okay, so I have $50,000. Okay, which true. Let's speak just in terms of money, right? You're going to look at your $50,000, and you are saying, "I want this $50,000, or 100, or a million, or 200 million, whatever it is. I want this to generate a return." So the investor looks at that return in terms of, how does this investment I'm going to make bring money back to me? Okay, that is a very different set of criteria. Like, if you and I are going to go evaluate a real estate property, we're going to look at, what does the market look like? What kind of rents are we going to get? Do we need to do any renovations on this property to increase its value or just get it back to the stage it should be at? Is there a way for us to generate extra value by, say, adding a suite or doing something in the kitchen or rezoning it and turning it into a duplex? I don't know. We're going to look at those factors, and then we're going to look at things like, getting the right tenants and making sure that the property is well maintained. And that's what a real estate investment is about, right? And we're going to look at the ways that we're going to make money on our investment. We're going to say, okay, we got principal pay down on the mortgage. We've got appreciation in the marketplace, which we may or may not get. Okay. We've got cash flow, and then we've got value adds, right? So those are the four ways. Okay. If we try to run a business, though, using that skill set, we're in trouble. Because what does a business need? A business needs sales, it needs marketing, it needs operations, it needs finance, it needs leadership, it needs people, it needs technology, it needs data, it needs an investment thesis, and it needs a strategy, right? Where in these 10 are there crossovers with the investor skill set and the business skill set? I mean, there are some, right? Managing money and knowing where to put it. But making an investment and sitting across the table from somebody and closing a deal, two wildly different skill sets, right? So if I'm going to be a real estate investor and I got to go now raise capital, which is a part of building a real estate investment business, I am no longer an investor. I am a salesperson. So if I don't have sales skills and I'm trying to just give you investment advice, am I going to close a sale? Maybe, but I don't want to leave that to chance. If I'm needing deal flow, what is that? That's marketing, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I can
So
see that there where there's the confusion lies as well.
yeah, exactly, right? So if you go into building if you want to scale a real estate investment portfolio, but only use investor skills, you're in trouble, because a business has different operating needs, and it requires way more of your time and attention than just being an investor does. Anybody who starts to scale a portfolio from 1 to 2 to 3 to 6 to 10 to 20 properties knows that eventually you become a full-time business operator. But if you are doing that as an investor, you're not going to look at, hey, should I hire an operations manager? Should
Mhm.
I, look at how I'm generating deal flow, which is marketing and sales? What am I doing with like the vision of this company that I built? Right? Did you have a strategy from day one, or did you just want to buy a bunch of properties? You see
Oh
what I'm
my
saying?
goodness. Yeah, totally all valid points. I think a lot of
Yep.
people get into it with the mindset of I'm just going to buy properties, long-term buy and hold,
Hmm.
and it's just going to generate cash flow, but then you just don't plan out
Yep.
how the steps that you're going to take to get there and building a solid foundation so that it's a well-oiled machine. You can't do that all on your own.
Which is what? That's a business. And so
Exactly.
if you've developed this skill set of evaluating good investments, And then you do a good job of evaluating investments. And you, like I said, you get to three, four. I noticed this happened at around four properties for myself and most people. You now have a little business that you're running, and that business requires time and care and attention and banking and managing tenants, and that's called business operations. And if you want to grow it from there, you need to have sales. You need to be able to raise capital. You need to be able to raise debt, right? Go to the bank and know what you're talking about. Again, marketing and sales. So different skill sets. Not saying you can't have both, but if you're starting with the investor mindset and then you think that you can go run a business without having business skills, trouble.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because
Yep.
recently in the last several years, I'm going to say 2023, 2024 is
Mhm.
probably where people started to run into those problems.
Exactly.
And and I can say it's all across Canada and the States that I've seen this has been a recurring story. So
Yeah, totally.
um people make mistakes though. And
Yep,
I
of
mean,
course.
I made mistakes by passively investing into some deals. You passively invested.
Yep.
And when you take a look back on the decisions that you had made, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah, I would have trusted myself a lot more with my own deals and my own what I was building. That sounds really selfish and probably arrogant to a certain extent. But I gave money to others because I didn't trust myself enough with my own deals, or I didn't have enough of my own deals. Um, and I was also probably chasing quick wins. And that's the naivety of being a new investor when, you know, things are hot and going well, and you get caught up in the hoopla of being around a whole bunch of people who are kind of doing the same and just normalizing that kind of activity. Um, I just I'm disappointed in myself on that because I don't have a single deal that I've done where I've been like the lead, the go-to, the hey, I'm going to run this thing and do it well, that hasn't made money. I have deals though where I've given money to others to manage and they haven't. So it's not to say that, you can't partner and win. I've probably just been doing it wrong, or I chose the wrong people. That's my fault, right? I need to learn from it and get better. And maybe market conditions also dictated some of the issues. Um, it's not that I would never do it again. It's just it has taught me to be confident in my own investments and to be very cautious with how I use my money. Um, yeah, I don't want to dissuade people from partnerships and things like that. I think they're great if done well. I do have some successful ones, so it hasn't all been bad. Okay. But I can look at the ones where I quarterbacked them and I was like, these ones have done better. So to me, it was just kind of a sign to say, hey, at this time, at this point in life, until you're ready to, look at this again and maybe approach it differently, um, trust yourself, do your own deals, and you'll be okay.
Do you think that when you're making decisions, not only if you're doing a deal, I find a lot of people start off passive because due to lack of experience, right? They're like,
Sure.
okay, well, I'm going to do my due diligence on this. I'm going to let the person with more time and experience take the lead so that I can learn as I go. But also, you can only make decisions based on the amount of information that you have at that time. And a
Mhm.
lot of that information that's being put out there, which I do actually agree with, is diversifying your investments. So you might have some in active, you might have some in passive, different types of investments that you can do. So do you not think that those different elements had played a role in the decisions that you made at that time?
Um, I do. I definitely think that they did. Um, yeah, I mean, you are going to be you're going to be influenced by the environments and the people that you are around. And this is part of the reason actually why I removed myself from these environments when I felt like I was starting to see some of these wrinkles. I was starting to see some things that I didn't think were right. And this, again, this kind of goes back to the thing I was saying earlier about the investor mindset versus the business owner mindset. Um, when I started to see some of those things and I was in a room with a whole bunch of people like that and normalizing these kinds of activities, that I was like, guys, I don't think this is the right thing to do right now. Like I think some of us are playing really fast and loose with other people's money, and I'm concerned that if I'm right, that people are going to get hurt. And I want to be very clear. This is not about, hey, Doug, that's great. You were right. I don't care about being right. It's kind of like that scene in The Big Short, if you've seen that movie, where Brad Pitt's character, is it Brad Pitt? Yeah, Brad Pitt's character is like working with the really young guys who they like short the bonds or whatever, and they end up making millions of dollars, and they're super excited. And then Brad Pitt's character, who's been around for a really long time, he's like, "Stop dancing, stop celebrating." And he's like, "Why?" He's like, "Because while you guys are winning, America is failing, right? And
Mm.
like people are going to lose jobs because of this. People are going to lose their houses because of this. Like it's not worth celebrating. Don't be happy. Like congrats, you made some money, but like people are going to get hurt." And that's kind of the feeling here. It's like, great, you saw this coming, but what does that really mean? Well, it means I lost some money because I had a deal that was out. I had some money with some people. And it means that a lot of other people who probably were just getting into real estate investing, doing their first deals, lost it. Like I know people that mortgage their houses to do deals, and then their investments fall apart. It's like, well, shoot, guys, how does that feel? And meanwhile, we're in this room talking about how amazing it is that we're all scaling up so quickly. Like, no, that's wrong. And so all that to say is like if that's what is influencing you and it was influencing me, you got to ask yourself like, hey, should I be in this room and in this space? Because you will pick up energy from other people, you will pick up ideas, you will have agreements with others who are in community. And so it's one of the most beautiful things about being in community, but it's also dangerous. And I think that's a challenging line for all of us to walk. Um, you mentioned something earlier about the little habits and how like, you know, they can compound over time, obviously, and take you downhill. Um, the beauty of that is it also goes the other way too, right? You make these little investments day in, day out, and then all of a sudden your life is looking really, really good because you've made these little deposits. It's the same thing in this environment, right? I definitely got into the diversify and do the private lending and do the, get involved in the land development and do the flips and the burrs and the buy and holds. And yeah, I mean, the private lending didn't go well, right? Everything else went good. That one didn't go so well, right? So,
Yeah, lesson learned there. Even if you do your due diligence and you try to research it as much as possible,
yep,
there's still that possibility and that level of risk in what you're
yep,
doing because you are trusting
100%.
someone else with it.
Yeah.
So,
Here's,
noted there.
I do want to note this too, though. Because, people might listen to that and go, oh, well, that happens. And so that's why I'm not doing it because someone lost. And as much as I don't like to lose, of course, who does? Um, I do not regret being in the game. I do not regret taking a shot because, um, it's money. We can make it back, right? Yeah, it may set us back, but we're gonna make it back. Far worse to sit on the sidelines, in my opinion, and not do anything and have regret and, play the game that a lot of Canadians and probably Americans are doing too, where it's like, leave your money in a savings account, put it in a mutual fund or whatever, 4%, 5%, 6% a year, um, and not invest because you're scared to do so. And your cash is worth way less today than it was 5 years ago. I'm not saying anything revolutionary here. Your audience probably knows this, but like, go into a grocery store today, go to a gas station. Gas is 2.29 here. Like, that's insane, you know? And 5 years ago, we thought it was expensive when it was 169. So, you're paying more and your cash is worth less. Um, you got to do something. So,
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because if you're too scared to do something, you'll never make a move. But if you do make a move, even if you lose, if you don't, you're still learning and you're gaining experience, which allows you to make better moves and constantly improve down the road. Would you
mhm,
agree or disagree with that?
100% agree. You're
Okay.
going to pay the tax one way or the other, right? You pay tax. When I say that, like, you pay an education tax, right? So that's the cost of a deal that goes bad. One of the first house flips that I did, I knew I wasn't going to make money on it. I paid an education tax to learn how to flip a house. So I didn't make money, but I literally went into it. And I was like, I'm going to educate myself with this investment because I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose this money. I'm going to invest this money one way or another. Because if I go to do this without learning, I might get into a deal that I lose 10 grand on or 20 grand because I got I didn't know what I was looking for. Um,
Hmm.
or I'm going to hire a contractor. They're going to tell me it costs 80 grand to do this, and I know it can get done for 60 if I just manage the trades a little bit better. But if you don't know, you don't know. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember buying this property. This was the foreclosure, the one that I told you about earlier, where it freaked out my mom and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to learn how to renovate, and I bought all the power tools, and I learned how to, do flooring and do baseboards and actually paint properly and do lighting and all this stuff and put in the kitchen and did it all. And I came out of that and I was like, wow, okay, I'm comfortable with this now. I get this enough to know that I'm not going to do electrical and I'm not going to do plumbing and I'm going to hire a painter because even though I can do it, it takes a long time and it kind of sucks. But I'll do the other things. And that's what it taught me. So I didn't make money on the deal. Fine. But you know what that did? Is that was the education tax that I paid to then go and flip 12 houses over the next 3 years, which allowed me to extend my quote unquote retirement from 1 year to 3 years. Worth
I
it?
like
Totally.
yeah, I like
Right.
your perspective.
Yeah. So that's what you're paying for. And these other, these deals where I've lost money is, yeah, you've got to look at them and be like, okay, maybe if I had paid $10,000 and taken, a university degree, or I had, gone to somebody who really knows what they're doing and, gotten mentorship and paid for some coaching or whatever it was, I pay for it there to avoid the mistakes and it doesn't happen. Okay, that's another way of doing it. Sometimes you pay for the course and you still lose, So either way, if you go in with this idea that, hey, I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow and I'm going to get better, then it makes it a lot easier to make sense of the dollars and cents that are going into it, and your time for sure.
Wow, fair point. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that a lot of people can agree and relate to that, that whether you're paying for education, experience, hands-on, or studying in a book, it doesn't matter. Either way, you're going to pay. It just depends on which avenue
Mhm.
you want to pursue. How do you want to get there, right?
Yeah.
I'm more of a hands-on person. I like that more,
Yep.
not much of a studier.
Hmm.
But either way, I think that that's how you make educated decisions moving forward to determine what works best for you. And now
Hmm.
we know we don't necessarily want to passively invest in someone else's deal for our reasons, but we can create those opportunities for other people.
Hmm. Sure.
And I love that.
Yeah.
So you still own real estate, and you also recently acquired a business. Do you own the
Yes.
one business or multiple?
I own one. I don't know if owning multiple businesses is in the cards for me. I don't. Maybe I'm not going to close doors, but yeah, I still have a small real estate portfolio. What do we have? Four properties, 8 units, and so it's on care and maintenance at this stage. At its peak, I had 10, and it had gotten to the point where it was no longer, yeah, serving the right purpose for my life. So I slowly was divesting over a period of years to do a couple of things. One, just kind of get these ones that no longer made sense for me off my plate. Two, liquidate and give me some capital to be able to go buy an active and operating business. So yeah, I purchased that business 4 months ago, and that was part of a similar theme running through this whole show in my life. That was part of a very intentional decision to buy an active business. I didn't answer your earlier question about, hey, where did that come from? You know, the door-to-door sales company was one thing, and then if I think it was maybe five years ago, I read this book that my brother had given me called How to Buy a Small Business. It was like a Harvard Business Review book, and I read it and I was just fascinated, because it's like, this makes a lot of sense. And this was just coming out of you know removing myself from some of these real estate investment groups and really like thinking more on, okay, what are my thoughts on this? Like, where am I going with kind of the next chapter? I don't want any outside noise to be influencing me. I need to start hearing my own voice again and growing confidence in that. And so I read this book and I looked at it and I said, well, my dad ran a small business for many years, did well, sold it, took care of our family, was able to buy commercial real estate with the cash from his business. And that was one of these other things that had stuck out for me from this door to door job was, okay, have an active business that's generating good cash flow, use that money to buy real estate. Pretty simple game. Um, why reinvent the wheel? And so that reading that book planted a new seed of, okay, I want to buy a business at some point, or I want to start one and actually do it well. Because to that point, I was 30 years old. I had been a part of a couple of small startups and I had been, at the founding level, whatever that means. It's like, we failed. We did not know how to generate revenue. Um, we were investors who didn't know how to run a business. So no one's doing sales properly. No one's doing marketing. Finally got fed up. I read this book and I'm like, if I'm going to do this properly, I need to generate and build a different set of skills the same way I learned how to do real estate investing. And this is not going to happen with a weekend workshop. This is not going to happen with some Instagram guru. This is going to happen by, to me, it was getting a job at Cardone Canada and doing sales training every single day and making 40,000 cold calls over a year and a half and just grinding and figuring it out. And the goal at 30 became, I'm going to be the kind of person at 40 who can buy or build or start an actual company, do this well, and succeed with it and take care of my family and buy real estate with the cash flow from the business. That was a 10-year plan. And, at 34, 35, acquired the business. So, but to go from, real estate investor, hey, I need to learn these skills, to actually buying the business, that's a whole journey where, I'm learning sales. Then I became a director of sales at a marketing company, learned a little bit about marketing there. Thankfully, there were some translatable skills from the real estate world, right? I had started to raise capital. We were starting to do a lot of deals with other people, finding the money to do the flips. Obviously, flipping houses is a lot more like an actual business than a passive real estate investment business. So that was good. but yeah, running operations and, building networks and business development and leadership, communication, all those kinds of things. Those were all kind of like steps along the way. And then, yeah, it was about 2 years ago that I actually started searching for a business to buy. And it took a long time to find one. Unlike real estate investments, business investments have a lot more moving pieces. Yes, they can be a lot more lucrative. They're also a lot more risky. So, you really have to have a lot more confidence and faith and belief in yourself and in people, because businesses are made up of people. And unlike a real estate investment, sometimes you can't, like, just plop money in and expect it to turn around. You need to be involved. And I didn't want to be a passive business investor. I wanted to be an active business owner for step one of this, next chapter. And so, yeah, I found this company. I had built a search target for myself, kind of a target statement. This is what I'm looking for, the size of company, what do they do? It needed to match where I could add value to the business. So I had a very clear target statement of what I was looking for. And yeah, I read another book actually called Buy Then Build by Walker Diebel. Those were the two books that I read. I read them and I studied them. I have like hundreds of pages of notes. And then I just went out and actually did what the book was telling you to do. And, it took longer than I thought it would. Most things in life do. But here I am on the other side of it. And now I'm, actually, in business ownership. And, you look back at all the other steps that got here, being an engineer, the door-to-door sales, working at the sales training company, the real estate investing, the coaching, the speaking, all of it has been, grounds for building into where we are today, which is really cool to see, right?
Well,
So
first off,
years.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say years of intention. You know, like
Mm.
that's and yes, the path has kind of changed along the way, but even as the path has changed, as you go down this direction, it's like this is very intentional right now. Okay, and something changes. It's like, okay, just as much intention going this direction. And so that's always been a part of it, is trying to figure out what is the reason for doing this. The only time that I've been out of intention and getting off track is when I was doing the engineering thing. And and it's funny how when I look over the past 15 years of my adult life, that one area has been that was the source of a lot of, darkness and depression and not feeling like I was doing what I'm supposed to do in life. It was because I wasn't being intentional. And then one day you wake up and you're like, this is what I want. Time to make a change. Okay, cool. I'm done. Sorry.
Yeah, you made some really intentional shifts there in order
Yeah.
to get yourself on track. I first want to congratulate you on the new business.
Mm,
That's very
thank you.
exciting, and it's an awesome shift in your career and what you've chosen to do. Um, when it comes to purchasing a business that's already running, it's already its own ecosystem with all these moving parts and people. And that is very different from what you've done previously at any point in your life, in your career. Did you find, I mean, reading the books, granted, I think really helps prepare you for that, as well as recognizing your transferable skills and then putting that together to make this
Mhm.
unique cocktail that is Doug Meyers' skill set. Um,
Good way of putting it.
and thank you. Did you find it difficult to shift into that role of putting yourself into this pre-existing ecosystem that is this new business?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely it is. Um, you know, I think anybody who's taken a new job at an organization knows what this feeling is like when you're stepping into something completely new, all new faces, all new activities, or maybe, maybe you're carrying some similarities from your previous experience. But it's new, it's a new office space, it's a new activity, it's a new commute, whatever the thing is. Um, that's challenging for anybody who takes a new job. So, imagine for a second dropping into new ownership. You have the the whole new job component plus all of the additional challenges that come with ownership and leadership, like people coming to you for answers on everything. The buck stops with you. You control the money. Money flows in, money flows out. You're paying people's salaries or their commissions. They are relying on you, whether they know it or not, to keep this thing running. That is really the basis of their financial engines. That is keeping their life going. Right? It's a lot of responsibility, and it's scary and humbling, and like forces me to be really grateful for being in a position to steward those resources well and to take that responsibility, and do it with the right heart and the right integrity and intentions. And of course, we want to be profitable, and of course, we want to make money, and we want to have a return on investment, and all that stuff. Um, but I really look at it as stewardship, because um, not everybody is suited to lead a business and run a business. It is a very, I think it's a really noble thing for people to do, because there's so much that goes into it, and just being on the other side of it now. I knew this going in. It's very real now. There are pressures with it, for sure. Big pressures. Um, Amazing opportunities, amazing rewards, but also like you feel the weight of leadership for sure. Um, so that has been challenging. That has been difficult, especially when you come into a running business that someone has run for 30 plus years. Um, you're still trying to find out where the bathroom is. And meanwhile, you're cashing a check for, 5 figures, 6 figures for a project that you have no influence over. And, if somebody were to get hit by a bus, would probably have some real challenges you'd have to figure out. That's not easy, but that's not easy for anybody.
No, that sounds incredibly intimidating.
It is. It is. Combine that with, having to earn the trust of people, right?
Hmm.
I knew going in that I wanted to be very clear with everybody day one and through the first 90 days, and we're past that now. And I said to everybody, I'm like, no one's losing their job. Everybody's here. We're going to continue to operate, and we're going to build something amazing for the future. But like, no pay is changing. No benefits are changing. You all have jobs. Like, I bought a thing because I liked what I saw here, and everybody plays a key role in that. And I didn't know everybody. I know them now, right? Still getting to know them, but like that is true. It's I didn't want people to lose their jobs. And what do employees think? New guy comes in, he's going to clear house.
Hmm.
So for like 60 days, two months, everybody's on edge. Who's the new guy? What's he doing? And like, you're not, people can't see me on camera. I don't know how old I look anymore, but I'm 35, and I'm going into a business with people who've been working there for 15, 20 years. They're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, they're established in their career. And then just imagine what that must be like. Some new kid who's younger than them comes into the business that they know and is now the boss. Like, talk about delicate.
You
So,
have to be very careful in the way that you approach these
oh,
relationships and how
totally,
you build them.
totally, right. And so, I don't know if anybody from my company is going to listen to this podcast. Who knows? Maybe I'll send them the link and they can learn a little bit more about me. But I was very intentional, and I continue to try and be as intentional as I can to like nurture these relationships, and let people know that like I value them as people. I value their inputs to this company. Um, I don't know enough yet. I'm still learning. I'm a quick learner. I'll figure it out. But I don't know enough yet to, tell you to do something differently, um, that you've been doing for 10 years. Like it's too technical, right?
Mm. Hmm.
People might think, oh, Doug, it's window coverings. How technical can it be? Like, trust me. You want to put a motorized blind and a recessed ceiling pocket and, match the drapes on the other side of the room to it, have it all work off of one button. There's some stuff that goes into that. And so just being really respectful as much as I can of the people who have the knowledge and experience and letting them know that I'm not here to step on their toes or change how they're operating until perhaps the point where I can actually be of value and service to them. Until then, it's like I'm going to learn and I'm going to be humble and I'm going to treat you with as much respect as I possibly can. And you let me know if I'm off track. And that has, I think, well, I can feel it. I think it's helped people just ease in. And I think it's, as one of the staff who's been there for a long time, said to me the last one-on-one that I had with her. She said, I feel like there's a cautious optimism moving forward. And I was like, you don't know how much that means to me to hear that and be like, what a compliment. Cautious
Hmm.
optimism. Um, and some listeners might be like, that's crazy. That's silly. You should be, have a whole bunch of killers in your organization. I'm like, guys, we sell window coverings. I don't need killers in my organization. I need people who care about things that look nice and are, wise. Because if someone's going to drop 40 grand on window coverings, we better get it right. And they probably want to feel good about it because they're going to interact with them every day. So I don't
Mm.
need gunslinger deal makers. I need people who care. And so when someone says that to you after you feel like you've been investing a lot of time and, helping people feel good about this transition, that is upsetting for them, not like they're sad, but it just like it upsets things, there's just a different feel. Um, that's great. It tells me that I think I've done at least one thing right.
It's a good perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're doing this, you have your one-on-ones, and I can understand that when a company switches ownership, I've been through that as well. There's always that uncertainty, and it shows that you are putting a certain amount of trust in the people who have been doing it for so long, that they know what they're doing, trust what they're doing, and they're also going to teach you and guide you through it. But have you ever found yourself intimidated or maybe doubting yourself and thinking, oh, shoot, maybe I got in over my head on this?
Mm, yes, I definitely have those days. Um, they're less now than they were in the very beginning. I think that's natural for anybody who's stepping into something new, especially anybody who's stepping into a leadership position. Because, like, I mean, here's the thing about, well, anything in life. If you've never done it before, then it's going to feel like the first time because it is the first time. And no book is going to prepare you for that, and no, mentor relationship is going to prepare you for the actual activity of doing the thing. Like we can talk about doing a real estate investment as long, for years, and I've done that with some people who could never press play. And I remember sitting with those people and be like, you know John, you're going to learn everything you need to know that you don't have an answer on yet by finally doing the deal and getting started. And I think it's just a matter of getting yourself to the point where you have like 80% of what you think you need, and the rest you have a confidence that you're going to be able to figure out the remaining 20%, because you're never going to have it all figured out. And if you live your life thinking I need to have everything figured out before I then make the jump, well, then you're not really making a jump anymore, are you? You're just kind of where you're supposed to be. right? If I
Fair
knew how to
point.
run a company and I had all the skills and everything all figured out, then I would have been running a company, but I wasn't. So there was another jump that I need to make. And in order to make that jump, you're just looking at, okay, what are the 80% of skills I need to have? Okay, I'm good on these. Now it's time to go jump and figure the rest out. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I look at it. I'm asking myself day in, day out, hey, what else do I need to continue to learn on the technical side of this business so that I can, be a good source of driving revenue here, because that's going to be very important. But a lot of the other things, I mean, they're very similar. It's dealing with people, it's, communicating well, it's leadership, it's managing your finances. It's, the basic principles of marketing and sales and operations. Those are more common across business than they are different. Um, and people, you love this comment from business people. Oh, it's different here. Yeah, is it really? You have a product, you're trying to sell a product, you need people to sell the product to. And then once you sell the product, you collect money. And then you have people who deliver the product. And then you do follow up. And if you have a bunch of money left over, you need to do something and invest it. It's like, okay, cool. So whether you sell plastic cups or you sell cell phones or you sell microphones or you sell the giant line and photo that's in your background, it's all the same. So if you learn how to, do those skills, the only pieces that you're missing are the actual like technical components of delivering the product or service. And those are often the things that take the longest amount of time to learn. Or you just say, all right, I'm going to hire people to do that so that I can focus on being the business owner. Because not everybody can do the business stuff, right? For all the reasons that we've already talked about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, that's incredible. I love how you're approaching that. And you're taking on these new ventures and you're learning and expanding in your skill set always. And even though it is sometimes intimidating or you can sometimes question yourself, I mean, moving forward is what gets you to the point that you're at now at, I mean, a ripe young age of 35. You're
Oh my
still a
gosh.
kid.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But
Doesn't feel like it
after
anymore.
talking to you though, it feels like your staff are actually really lucky to have you. I think you have a really good, fresh viewpoint on it, how to approach a new business and how to not only respect it, but also protect it and make sure that it continues to be a well-oiled machine. And also the perspective of going into this business in a sense that what's my value add? What can I bring to you to enrich this, to allow it to grow, allow it to become a better place, if not better, then at least consistently moving in the right direction. So
Mhm.
I respect that very much, and I like the sound of what it is that you're doing. Do you have
Mhm.
any plans
Thanks.
for the future and what you want to do next?
Yeah, I want to run a marathon in October. Oh, you mean business? Um, Geez, when I started, when I bought the business, um, the first 6-12 months were the plan was for them to be really a period of evaluation, observation, learning, just getting known in the space. Um, it's a business that's definitely built, heavily on relationships. And anybody who's new needs to establish their relationships in order to be able to, create continuity. Um, so that's been the approach. I didn't come in with this idea of like we're gonna 10x this business and blow it up and we're moving to a bigger office and a huge showroom and we're gonna add this and this. Um, some people like that idea of business and they thrive on it and it's their skill set. Power to you if it is. Um, for me, I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna be pretty good with this business maintaining what it's doing right now for year 1 2 and then seeing some sustainable growth thereafter through improving some of our sales processes and doing a little bit more outbound work on, reaching new clients, pouring a little bit more money into marketing, being a little bit tighter on some of the operational efficiencies that I think exist. And if we can do that well, and I can treat people well along the way, we should be fine, and we should do well, and we should be able to grow and expand. And any, additional excess that comes from the business after my, bank loan is paid off, because by the way, if you want to buy a business, you better have some money. And I didn't use all of my money the same way I didn't use all of my money when I did real estate. That, by the way, is very translatable. If you're moving from real estate investment to business investment, very similar conversations with bankers. But you do need to learn how to speak their language. And if you can, because it's different than real estate, you're gonna be a rock star. So happy to talk about that another time. But yeah, like that's what's next for me. I really wanted to step in and see what life looks like when you're in the ownership chair. I have very different challenges today than I did 4 months ago before this, but I do really like them because, they're challenges worth fighting for and worth getting up for. You just feel like you feel like you're at work, but you're not. And that's a cool feeling amidst, all the pressures and stresses, of course, of running the thing. It's also forced me to really look at, many of the systems and personal development stuff that I've done over the years that is a good foundation for where I'm at today, and seeing how they're being stressed and tested. Because I have, less time than I used to. That is just kind of my own time. So, being really intentional about making sure that, we're eating well and, still doing the workouts and, because I don't want to stop doing my other stuff just because I'm running a business. I'll run my 7th marathon in October, and my goal is to run a Boston Marathon qualifying time, which is not slow. So I need to train a lot, and I got to watch what I eat, and I got to drink lots of water and make sure I train a lot. I already said that. Those things all take time. So if I'm going to do that, I need to be, very intentional about what I do with the 16 hours a day of waking time. And if that means we don't watch TV, that's what it means. If that means, not scrolling on Instagram or being on social media, that's what it means. I'm totally okay with that. My life is way better without it. I challenge anybody to get off social media and see if your life is better. Yeah, that's what's next.
That is a great answer, Doug. I love that answer because it's so many people will just keep it to business. Everything's business, business. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I love that you're putting your passions in there too, and that you put a marathon in there, and that your health is upfront and very important to you, as it is to so many people out there. And finding balance. That's another thing. I find a lot of people who are business owners have a difficult time finding balance. It becomes a 24/7 thing to run your own business, to be an entrepreneur, but then everything else takes the back seat. And it seems like you found a good way to balance that.
I'm navigating new waters of what that balance looks like. And I'm sure, plenty of people said this, right? Like balance does not mean equality across all areas. It's definitely not what it means. It means like, feeling like each, pillar of your life is carrying the adequate amount of weight. And that doesn't mean that you need to spend 10 hours on each thing. That's not realistic. It means that you spend the right amount of time in the right areas. And if you don't, then you get cracks in your pillars and eventually things break. One of the things that was so obvious to me when I was doing my, so I think I mentioned this, for a year, I did coaching and consulting with business owners and other, kind of high performing people, whether they're salespeople or executives in businesses and stuff like that. It grew organically. I didn't market it. I didn't even do sales with it. I just like I just started being who I was in front of people and getting paid for it. It was great. um, well, anyways, I'm in front of a lot of these business owners. Some of them very successful financially, um, struggling mightily with this balance piece. And I was looking at them going, man, your business is grinding you out. Like you're not spending time with your family. Your health, you don't look good. Your energy's bad. Um, Financially, like you're good, but you're not actually that good relative to how much you're working. You spiritually, you're a mess. Like energetically, I do a lot of the calls on Zoom and stuff, and like, Zoom is different than in person, but you can tell on Zoom too. Like even on the phone, the frequency of people. It's like, wow, you are really operating at a low frequency right now. And and that was a good lesson for me coming into this, is that, you see what this looks like when you don't have systems in place to keep yourself balanced, or you don't prioritize health, or you think it's okay to drink every day, or whatever. I'm not here to judge, but like that's going to have an impact on you. Definitely is. And, these things compound over time. So seeing that in a lot of the people that I was working with, some more so than others, definitely opened my eyes and reminded me, now that I'm on the other side and I'm in the same kind of seat that they're in, leading a business and, you know, managing all of that, how important these things are. It's important to have time off. It's important to rest. It's important to get good sleep, to drink water, to do the simple things, to get out in nature, to spend time with your loved ones. You have to do those things. Um, if you don't, then yeah, you get off balance. And unfortunately, a lot of the times when people were coming to me, they're at that point. They're very off balance, and those are what's the word? Those are um, sharp changes that people need to make, or abrupt, right? Because their habits and the things that they do are very different than what I'm going to share with them. And it's, at that point, you're at crisis mode. Like that's when you have to make abrupt changes. And those are hard. Those are hard on people.
Hence the weekly check-ins.
Yes, absolutely. Way easier to correct something after a week of being off track than after 3 years, right? I think we can all agree.
Mm.
Yeah.
So given this, for anyone listening who is resonating with your story and they want to take action on their dreams and their passions, what advice would you give our listeners to allow them to have that confidence to take the step forward and follow their dreams?
I don't want to just have some like cute 2-word saying. Um, the thing that that's bubbling up for me right now is to perhaps not put so much weight in whether or not you believe that you're fully ready. Like you're never going to be fully ready. Um, I think I said this earlier. Like if you were already fully ready, you would have done the thing, and you would be doing it, and it would be done. I'll use a marathon as an example. Um, you can get as ready as you want to run a marathon, and what that looks like, because being at the finish line and getting the medal, like that's cool. Hey, I ran a marathon, bucket list item, yay, that's cool. I'll tell you what running a marathon really looks like. It looks like training for 4 months when no one's around and it's raining and it's cold, or it's too hot, or it's really windy, and your feet are blistered and you're sore and you're tired. And the last thing you want to do is wake up on Sunday and run 30 kilometers by yourself. Like that's what it actually looks like. And then wake up the next day and run 10 kilometers. and wake up the next day and run 14 and do them at different speeds and paces. That's what running a marathon actually looks like for a marathon runner. But until you get to race day and actually run the race, you're not a marathon runner, are you? You're just somebody who's trained for it.
Mm.
So the last like 20% is actually doing the thing and figuring it out. And so when you go and run your first race, or you buy your first investment property, or you're like me and you just buy your first business, there's going to be a lot of things that you maybe didn't realize were going to be a part of that. Like, first race in a marathon, I didn't know what it was going to be like to be passed by people because nobody ever passes me in training. I'm a, I'm a,
Fair point.
I'm a fast runner, like, but I had never been around other fast runners. So now I've got this 50-year-old little Asian woman who goes past me and I'm like, what? No. So I'm like racing her 5 kilometers in, being like, I don't get passed by tiny Asian women, right? Like, all my ego's all caught up in it. I'm like, what is going on? No, it can't happen, right? And then I'm at kilometer 25, gassed because I was racing this lady who turns out is like an elite marathon runner and has been doing this for years. Like,
Mm.
but I didn't know. I'd never been in a marathon before. So, again, the point is, is you can spend all this time getting prepared, but you're going to show up at the starting line for whatever the thing is that you're going to go do. And there's going to be an element of uncertainty that cannot be prepared for. And you just got to train your mind to be like, this is how it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to be 100% ready to go, confident that everything's going to work, yada, yada, yada. It's like, just get close enough. And if you stop seeking perfection before trying to actually go do the thing, you'll end up doing a lot more stuff and you'll just start to develop another skill, which is moving forward with uncertainty, anyways, and trusting that you'll figure the rest out. Because if you can develop that skill, which is a skill, then that gives you confidence to go do the next thing that you're a little bit unsure about, or the next thing, or the next thing. And I think that leads to a really cool and vivacious life in which you feel like you're on purpose and living intentionally. Because it takes courage to do that, right? It takes courage to actually follow what you feel called to, especially when everybody else might be like, your thing's a little weird, or you're crazy, or you can't do that. It takes guts.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a beautiful way to word it, I think, that there is a first for everything. You don't know that you can ride a bike until you ride a bike. You're going to have to fall off in order to get it done. And then that might lead to something else that leads to something else. And it turns you into who you are today. And I think we're changing every day. I'm not who I was 10 years ago. I'm not who I was yesterday. And I'm not going to be the same person tomorrow or 40 years from now because I'm constantly taking those steps outside my comfort zone. So I hope that our listeners take your advice to heart and put action into their plans and their ideas, because that's the difference between people who are successful, who go out there, they try. It goes beyond that idea and they actually take action. So I think that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
How can people get in touch with you or find you if they are looking for you, Doug?
Yeah, well, I mean, they won't find me on social media. I mean, they'll find some accounts, but they'll probably find they're very inactive. Best way is it would be to shoot me an email. Doug, Doug at gbeventures.ca. That's G as in George, B as in Bill, E as in Echo, ventures.ca. GBE stands for Get Better Every Day. What I didn't realize is how confusing that might be to say over the phone, because it's really hard to it's really easy to mishear it. So that's the best way to get in touch with me. I have a LinkedIn profile, Doug Meyers, but I'm not on there too much either. I'm very much focused on doing the things that I do day in, day out. I do check my emails. So if people want to reach out and say hello, of course, happy to connect and, serve where I can. And yeah, I hope this has been a fruitful conversation for yourself and for others. I appreciate you having me on here and, giving me time and space to share a little bit more. I don't know how long we've been going. It seems like a while, but time flies when you're just, talking about this stuff. And yeah, my goal is that people hear this, they want to grow, they want to get better, and they see a path forward to it. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us on the PowerHaus Podcast, Doug. You have been incredible, and I love your story. I loved digging into those layers, and you have a very interesting way of painting a picture and making that, passing on that message in such a way that people can take it in bite-sized pieces and put it into action. So thank you for sharing that with us. I really do appreciate it. I wish you all the best of luck. Not that you need it, but the best toward your new business ventures, and for your marathon that's coming up in October. I know you're just going to smash it out of the park.
I'll try. Mm-hmm.
And to our subscribers, thank you so much for listening and for joining us on the PowerHaus Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so that we can share this with more people and reach a wide audience. Until then, my name is Gabrielle Caine, and this is the PowerHaus Podcast. Take care. This is the PowerHaus Podcast with Gabrielle Caine. Know someone who should be on the show? Email info@powerhouspodcast.com. Until next time, do one thing differently today.